Hey, how's it going? I did a thing. About a year and a half ago, I purchased this DeWalt 734 thickness planer. And I like it. I like it. It's got a lot of great features. But after looking at a lot of the reviews, a lot of the comments, um, I decided to pull the trigger on the 735. Now, I know what you're thinking. What's the big difference? This is a 12 and a half inch cutter. This is a 13-inch cutter. Is a half an inch really worth it? That's what I said when I made the decision to save a couple $100 a year and a half ago and go with this one. But after using this planer in my shop more than almost any tool that I use outside of maybe my miter saw, CNC, or table saw, this thickness planer has become a very important part of my shop. So I decided to take a look at the 735 a little bit more seriously, and I pulled the trigger and ordered it. Today, what I'd like to do is give you an apples to apples comparison of these two and what I've found. Now, before we go any further, I'm not at all affiliated with DeWalt. Okay, I'm not being paid to promote this one or this one. I bought both of them for full price, except the fact that I found it on sale. And I'm just giving you my opinion as to what you're going to find with both of these. Now, don't forget to stick around to the end because we will be doing a final comparison to see how these two planers measure up to one another. So to start off with, let's look at the similarities. And let me pull up my notes here. Okay, number one, both of them are 15 amp. So they'll run on a typical 20 amp circuit. Number two, both of them have 20,000 RPM motors. So there's a similarity there. And third, both of them have approximately a 4.8 out of 5-star rating on Amazon. Now, Amazon is the only place that I really looked, but the ratings are very close there. Now, when you expand the ratings to get ratings on different criteria, there's some differences there, but overall, these are both very highly rated products. They are both, from what I understand, compatible with helical heads. I did see some information that the 734 was not compatible with the helical head, but that could have been an old review. It could have been upgraded since then. So I don't want to go on the record for that. Both of these came with in-feed and out-feed tables because this is in fact the 735X. The 735 does not come with the in-feed and out-feed tables, but the 735X does. 735X also comes with an extra set of blades. So if you see the difference between 735 and 735X, that's all there is to it. And before we go any further, if you feel that I've earned it, I would appreciate it if you'd hit that subscribe button, if you'd hit that like button, if you would leave a comment, because those three interactions that don't cost you a thing tell YouTube that this is valuable content, and it encourages YouTube to promote this video out more. So you can support this channel without costing yourself a penny just by simply doing those things. Also, if you'd like to support it even more and you decide you want to buy either one of them or anything else for that matter, in the description, I always have links to the products that I do use within my channel. And I do get a small commission off that. It doesn't cost you anything more, but it helps to support this channel for free. Okay, so those are some of the key similarities, but there are quite a few differences. And so now let's shift gears and let's talk about the differences between the two. The obvious one and the one that everybody jumps to is this is 12 and a half inches versus 13 inches here. So if all we were talking about was a half an inch difference, I would say don't spend an extra $100 to $200 on this particular model. But that's not all that we're looking at. So let's look at some of the other key differences between the two. The 734 has this manual carriage lock. Anytime you'd like to raise or lower your carriage, you unlock it manually, crank it up or crank it down, and then lock it in place. It's an extra step. It's a minor inconvenience, but not a big deal. Whereas the 735 simply has this hand crank, which, by the way, seems like it's a little bit more heavy duty. It has what they call an automatic carriage lock. Now, in my opinion, and based on the little bit that I've read, here's what I understand about the difference between the two. Because of the fact that the 735 has these 4 large lead screws or ball screws, I'm not sure what they actually are classified as, and that's it, the carriage will actually lock automatically on these bolts because of the fact that it's secured by all 4 of them. Whereas the 734 has two lead screws that have much thinner threads, and actually they're only about a half as thick. These appear to be about a ½ inch thick, whereas these screws appear to be about an inch thick, and also have a much thicker thread on there. Okay, as you see, these have a much thinner thread. Also, the 734 has 4 struts that it rides up and down on. So based on what I understand and what I've read, that's why the manual carriage lock is necessary for the 734, but this one is considered to have an automatic carriage lock. This one has a single speed of 96 cuts per inch. It's good for dimensioning lumber, but as you'll see when we actually do some tests here in a little while, there is a big difference between 96 cuts per inch and the second option on here, which goes from 96 to 179 cuts per inch for what they call a finishing pass. It gives a smooth finish that's probably the equivalent of 400 or higher grade sandpaper. Next, obviously, the 734 does have a dust port, but the 735 has an upgraded dust port that actually has a blower attached to it. And as you're going to see in some of the test cuts that we run here in just a couple of minutes, the blower on this dust port does do a much better job of removing more debris than the dust port on this one, which does not have a blower attached. Also, you can't see the inside of the blower on the 735, but I know on the 734, one of the drawbacks that I constantly deal with is this dust port does tend to get clogged because it does have a very thin dust port that debris must go through, and so it tends to get clogged up a little bit more easily. Next is the material removal gauge. On the 734, you have this one small gauge right here. So it does a fine job, but when you want to set your material depth, you have to actually place it right here to figure out how you want to set it. Whereas on the 735, that depth gauge runs all the way across. It seems like a small thing, but it actually is much more handy. All right, and now that we've had a chance to actually look at some of the similarities and differences, let's hook both of these up and let's run some material. Now, I'm going to use 2 different pieces of material. I'm going to use a standard pine 2x4, which is 3.5 inches wide. It's a soft wood, it's pine. And then I'm also going to use this 6 3/4 inch piece of walnut, and we're going to test out and see how each one of them performs. Let's go ahead and set our depth and come to the other side and see what happens. Now, we're beginning with the walnut. And again, this is the 734. You'll see a significant amount of dust. A little bit of that could have been residual from what hasn't been cleaned out in the past, but I did do a good job of cleaning it out as much as I could. Now let's move over to the 735. The noise is comparable. Notice there is almost 0 debris coming out the back. Now let's take a look around front and see what it looks like. So right here we see that both the 734 and the 735 do have a little bit of debris coming out the front. However, the back had almost nothing coming out on the 735. So it does appear that dust removal and debris removal is much better on the 735. Once again, I'll say it's possible that there was a little bit of extra debris in the 734 since I've used it quite a bit more, but I did try to make sure that I cleaned it out as well as I could. And now let's try another test just using our pine 2x4. We run that through. Not nearly as much debris this time. So let's move it over to the 735. And as you can see, not only is there very little debris whatsoever coming out the back end, but you can also see, I don't know how well you can actually see it, but that is a smooth finish with that finishing pass. So finally, did we answer that question? Is a ½ inch really worth it? So realistically, here's what we have. 12.5 inches to 13 inches, only a ½ inch difference. You have the automatic carriage lock versus the manual carriage lock, which I don't know if that's a big deal or not. A couple of differences that I did notice that were pretty significant is on the 734 we have a single speed, but on the 735 we have a variable speed, a 2-speed. And I will tell you, even though you might not have been able to see it in the video, there is a significant difference in quality of that finishing pass. That was buttery smooth. It was gorgeous. And then also with the 735, you do have the dust port that has the attached blower, where this one does not have the attached dust port. Now, if you have a better debris removal and dust collection system than I do, then that might not be a big deal for your planer. But for me, since I only have the shop vac with a little cyclone attachment right now, that is a big difference, knowing how much debris that a planer does put out. And then finally, another thing that is a handy difference, although I don't think it's a big deal breaker, is the fact that the depth gauge on the 734 is only about this wide, whereas the depth gauge for the 735 goes all the way across the entire front of your planer. So you can check it at any depth in any location.